A note before we start. This episode includes allegations of violence and murder. If you need support, call 1-800-RESPECT. On Sunday, a series of rallies organised by a group called What Were You Wearing took place across Australia. They were about domestic and family violence and violence against women.
Say it once, say it again, there's no excuse for violent men.
In Perth, the atmosphere was particularly charged. There, within hours of the rally, a man was charged with the murder of 30-year-old mum Erica Hay. She was the 27th woman to be killed in similar circumstances this year. At one of the rallies on the lawn in front of Parliament House in Canberra, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese took the microphone.
We're here today to demand that governments of all levels must do better, including my own, including every state and territory government.
The declaration was met with cheers, jeers and tears. He was heckled by a handful of attendees as he rattled off the government's 10-year, $2.3 billion gendered violence action plan.
We now have 10 days paid domestic. I agree it's not enough. I said that. We need to do more.
And then things took an unexpected turn.
We did ask to speak, myself and Katie, and we're told that that wasn't possible, and that's fine. I respect the organisers' right to do that.
That's a full-out lie.
The Katie he's talking about there is Minister for Women Katie Gallagher. She attended the Canberra rally along with Social Services Minister Amanda Rishworth. Just off to the side, one of the rally organisers, Sarah Williams, said, "That's a lie," and broke down in tears. She accused the PM of initially declining an invitation to speak and then, once at the rally and finding himself being heckled, insisting on taking the microphone. On social media, Williams later accused Albanese of abusing his power by aggressively stating, "I'm the Prime Minister of this country, I run this country." Williams said Albanese had lied and that before the rally, the organisers had approached both Gallagher and Albanese's offices, offering for them to speak. Here's Sarah Williams on Radio 2GB.
I heard that he wanted to speak, and I immediately thought, well, he wants to speak to save himself here and probably make myself look bad. So I said to the audience, do we want him to speak? I wanted the audience to choose, not him. And whilst I was saying that, he said behind me, which many people heard, "I'm the Prime Minister, I run this country."
On Monday morning, having called an emergency National Cabinet meeting for Wednesday, the PM addressed the accusation on Network 7's Sunrise breakfast program.
So she said you're on the stage with her and there was confusion about, who was going to speak. And then you said behind her on the stage words to the effect of, "I'm the Prime Minister and I run the country." Did you just say that?
Well, Nat, I'm not going to get into, that sort of debate.
Well, she's come on national TV and she's saying that in radio and TV around the country today. That, unfortunately, is the message that's being sprouted. And we know it's unfortunate, but you could put it to bed now.
Well, Nat, people, including Channel 7, were there for the recording of everything that went on. So you were all there. So the media were all around. They heard everything that was said there.
Sarah Eisen is a political reporter with The Australian. Sarah, the Prime Minister's been accused of saying, "I'm the Prime Minister, I run the country." He has not quite denied that, but has certainly not confirmed it. What do we think actually happened here?
The rally on Sunday, it just sparked so many opinions and reactions. Even as a federal political reporter, it's been pretty overwhelming in terms of the amount of information, the amount of views that have come out of Sunday. I think my opinion is that is to try to not sound combative. The way that the Prime Minister spoke on Sunday and getting into a tit for tat, into a defensive thing, I think didn't play well. So I think he didn't want to do this again with this sentence, I'm the Prime Minister, I run the country, to do the same sort of response as he did to the other accusation that he also refused to speak at the event at all. So I think it's a de-escalation tactic in trying not to engage in what could be another escalation of this sort of conflict, and try to keep it pretty low-key, pretty respectful, and again, try not to engage in a tit-for-tat.
Here's Nationals leader David Littleproud.
That's not how political leaders should carry themselves, nor particularly the Prime Minister. I have no sympathy for him whatsoever. If he had issues about whether he was invited or not, making it public in front of all those people was not the forum to do it.
I think you can almost see the opposition rubbing their hands because of how much Anthony Albanese and Labor, wrongly or rightly, pounced on Scott Morrison when he was Prime Minister. Really, all of the things he did when it came to women, when it came to the Women's March, where he said if it was another country, women might be met with bullets, was a pretty badly phrased thing that Morrison said. And Labor and Albanese really did leap on this and continued to leap on it during the election. Fast forward a couple of years, Albanese is now caught in a sort of almost a similar situation where he's really copping the ire of the sort of women's rights movement, and a lot of people in it at least. And so you're seeing the coalition say, well, now who's got a tin ear, which is that sort of thing that Albanese said of Morrison. So it is this real karma sucks moment, I think, is what you can see on the coalition's faces right now.
And then a twist. New vision emerged on social platform X, showing Albanese looking awkward as Williams asks the crowd if he should be allowed to speak.
I'm happy to know what we want team to talk with the ministers, hear what they have to say, and then we'll consider the decision of them speaking about 10 minutes.
Hear that? Anthony Albanese says something that sounds to me like, I'm the Prime Minister. But I can't hear him saying, I run the country. Williams asks the crowd and then hands over the mic.
I'm not having any attacks towards myself or the organisation. Speaking or not speaking?
We've been here before. In January 2022, then Prime Minister Scott Morrison invited Grace Tame, a survivor of child sexual abuse who was then Australian of the Year, to the Lodge. Tame had been a critic of the Morrison government's response to the allegation of sexual assault by Brittany Higgins, who said she'd been raped in Parliament. Here's Tame at an earlier National Press Club event.
Is there anything that you specifically think Anthony Albanese would do better?
All Anthony would have to do is none of the things that Scott's done.
When there's a camera, regardless of what's going on, often people will look at the camera and give a big beaming smile. That's kind of the expectation for what happens at not just these events, but I guess broadly. Grace Tame didn't really do that, and it really did produce these pretty incredible photos of this woman's advocate giving this, incredible side-eye kind of expression. And then obviously afterwards didn't say, oh, no, I didn't mean that or anything like that. Like, no, that's where she's coming from, is she is disappointed with leadership, right? So, picture tells 1,000 words. I think that's the exact right phrase to put to that particular point in time.
Coming up, why domestic violence has suddenly rocketed to national attention. The Australians spent decades leading the conversation on domestic violence, coercive control and the safety of women. You can check out our investigative podcasts from The Teacher's Pet to My Sister's Secrets and read all our agenda-setting journalism by subscribing at theaustralian.com.au. We'll be back after this break. For a long time, domestic violence was concealed in shame and silence. But over the past decade, much of law enforcement's time has been spent dealing with this issue, as women became more and more confident that if they called police, they'd be believed. Domestic violence now takes up well over half police time, but there are deep flaws in the systems of prosecution and protection. Victims can obtain apprehended violence orders, but offenders can ignore them if they're determined enough. Police can arrest perpetrators, but magistrates can grant them bail, or they can serve light sentences, which leaves victims doubly vulnerable. So far this year, we've seen young Sydney couple Luke Baird and Jessie Davies allegedly murdered by one of the men's former partner policeman Beau Lamar Condon. Young mum Molly Ticehurst allegedly raped and then weeks later murdered by her former partner. It's important to note nobody's been convicted of either of those crimes, but it's part of an atmosphere of increasing concern. In April, a lone knifeman appeared to be targeting women and children shopping at Bondi Junction Mall on his murderous rampage. The killer's father later said he was frustrated because he couldn't get a girlfriend.
I think the public mood and from organisations advocating for change, yes, the government is doing a lot, but it's not this huge step away from what the coalition was doing. This is what governments have always done, is invest in different frontline services and in some prevention and in some research. And this, it seems a bit status quo at the moment, I suppose. And what I think is really coming out of the last few rallies in the last few months is this sentiment that we're actually way past the kind of status quo that we've had for years in terms of spending and in terms of rhetoric and in terms of other things. Not solely because, but very, very much chiefly because we've had 27 murders of women in the first 4 months of 2024. There's never been as many women killed in the first 4 months of any year ever. And it just seems, I think, because of how high those numbers are, we need something else, something more. It needs to be an emergency. It can't feel like a budget cycle. It can't feel like, oh, well, this is going to be an election mandate. It can't feel like the norm, the status quo. It has to be something else. And I think across the community of women's advocacy, there's a real concern that the national plan to end violence against women and children just isn't really working. From women I've spoken to in those sectors, they're saying, look, it's great that there's stuff in that plan. It says we want to end violence against women and children in a generation. It doesn't say how. It doesn't lay any of that out. And we need that clarity. We need that really clear ambition and short-term goal making, which currently it's just a bit in the abstract and it's a bit ad hoc and it's just not enough. And that's what we're hearing time and time again over the past few months, is not enough.
Sarah Eisen is a political reporter with The Australian. You can read that story, as well as all the nation's best news, sport, business and politics, right now at theaustralian.com.au.